Hello and welcome to today's Thursday show on Our Game. Myself, Michael Verney, in the hot seat. The Saint is doing extending his pre-season training at the moment, but delighted to have an able deputy in Kilkenny legend, Eddie Brennan. Eddie, how are you?
I don't know about that, Mixer. How's the farm?
Good. Does it ever annoy you, actually? Because, like, say us journalists, like, every time I do a story about you, or you'll always be, you know, Kilkenny legend. Is that a nice thing, or is it a bit like, oh Jesus, you know?
Yeah, it's a bit, oh Jesus. It's funny, yeah. I don't know, because it's funny, people say things like that, and I see, you say it myself about sports stars or whatever, and I suppose you say it, but you don't like it being said about you. That's, like, genuinely, you don't, because you just go, listen, I suppose that's for me, the thing with GA, you're just one of the lads up the road. You're just, when you land into the club, there won't be too many in the club calling you a legend anyway, that's for sure.
Well, you won't be long being a bollocks, to be honest with you,
depending
on what you do.
That's it. Oh no, there's no doubt about that. But sure, look, all parts of the fun anyway.
Eddie, obviously a massive game this weekend. We'll chat a bit more in detail about it in a minute. But I'm just wondering about, like, there'll be a lot of comparisons made between the current Limerick team and your own Kilkenny team. Despite maybe having a bad league last year, Limerick have been quite dominant in the league, winning in 19, winning in 20. Was it something that you were always conscious of back in the day with Kilkenny, that while you're not going, 100%, you don't have all your training done, you don't have maybe your body of work done that you'd want to have done, but that this sows a little seed of doubt in the opposition, if we're able to win in league time when maybe we're missing a cohort of Ballyhale lads and we're not fully tuned up? Were you kind of aware of that at the time?
Yeah, sometimes you are. I think the league is all about, I think you come in and you find out quickly enough where you're at. Personally, you look at yourself, you're always assessing yourself and say, am I fit? Am I moving in the right direction? And as you go through the league, then you're obviously looking for that bit more life in the body, and the legs are, moving a bit quicker or whatever it is. And then you're looking around probably at, I think as I got a bit older, you looked at it as a responsibility too, of bringing, if new lads were in, that you had to kind of help them along the way as well. Like, so you were, and obviously you didn't want to help them too much for fear to take your spot off you. But
you wanted to have them tuned up so that just when you were exiting the door, they were ready to step through it. But you don't want to have them flying through the door while you're still there.
That's it, like, and it's even, I think, I suppose the league is too about the old road trips as well. Like, I remember, going to places like Galway, going to places like Clare on the bus, and sure, there was, like, if you hadn't a bit of crack on the way down, that was, that was what kept you, I suppose, somewhat relaxed and ready for the match. But yeah, going back to the question, I think you wanted to kind of arrive towards the back end of the league, just as you're facing into, the late spring into the summer, and you wanted to, I think you wanted to show the manager, number one, that you were dialed in, and it wasn't a case of you were easing up, or, it was the one thing you always wanted to show, that you were in good form and you were looking forward to it. And, Brian often spoke with body language, so you made sure that you got your own house in order. But equally then it was, a responsibility to keep the, younger lads going and help them along the way. But as regards then keeping the opposition at bay, I think, we got to a league final in 2007, I think, against Waterford, and we'd done it without the Ballyhale lads, and I think Henry came back in for that league final, and Waterford beat us, in a great game up in Thurles that day. But, I remember even chatting to my father afterwards, and he was saying, like, when you look at the team that got us to that league final, he said, look, you'd have to be happy with the progress. And it was the same then. I jumped forward to 2009. We had a cracker of a game in Thurles. And when you think of that match, and I spoke about this recently, during that match, right, we lost Henry, Martin Comerford, Mick Kavanagh to yellow cards during the match, where you had to go and a sub came in.
Right, yeah.
And then before the match, we lost Derek, Michael Fenley, Noel Hickey, Brian Hogan got injured during the match. So by the end of that match, we had a crew on the pitch that a lot of people would have felt, geez, you'd be tipping Thurles in league final. You know, I think Michael Grace came on, and that was the time that Richie and TJ announced themselves, Richie Hogan and TJ Reid. That day, I think they scored phenomenally between the two of them. Taggy was brilliant. So that was where you learned we have a great squad now heading into the championship. And that's like what your question was, you know, where you were at. You were building your squad. And I see a lot of similarities now in Limerick at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny because Richie and TJ stood up and maybe didn't get the chance to take the mantle maybe for another couple of years come championship by the time Henry and a few other lads were gone, but they showed that they were able to do it. Just a question in there from Richard Hogan. He's just wondering, Eddie, is Eddie going back playing Junior E this year?
Well, we won Junior E last year, so we're up to D. So Junior D championship this year, I don't know.
Do you got by all accounts from chatting to you before, you got as much crack out of that and as enjoyment out of that as anything in the last couple of years. It's great once you get to a certain age, you are just delighted to be still playing and chatting and talking with the lads and having a bit of crack. Like, it's great to just be out there even. Like,
oh, this is brilliant. Yeah, no, last year I really, really enjoyed it because kind of early in the year, you know, you don't need to go training, you just arrive on. And my approach was, if the boys are stuck and they're short, happily we'll tug out and we'll make sure that we have a team. But definitely the younger lads have to be put in first. And as the league went and then we got into the championship, suddenly there was a settled 15, which had, I think, there was 4 of us starting and we broke 200 between us. And so, and by the end of the match, I think there was 2 or 3 more 37 or 38-year-olds on the pitch. So, but there was a great out spirit because you had the real young lads, 19, you know, starting off their careers with the club, and then you had the granddads or the pensioners, as they were referring to us. And I was even just listening to them and the bit of gallery with them, and you know, it was thoroughly enjoyable. And even, you know, the night afterwards, looked, was even the crowd that came from the club, great satisfaction. But just, you know, I suppose it's like you said there, it's real utterly enjoyable because the pressure is off. We can just let loose and go and hurl. And sure, look, I remember at one stage our coach was like, right lads, spread out, keep it wide, use your legs. And we're like, no, keep it tight, keep it narrow, we don't need the ball out to the wing. So bit of crack, yeah, but enjoyable. Yeah,
Eddie, I'll just throw a quick one to you here. I just want to ask you about the situation that Johnny Kelly's in with Offaly at the moment. So they've played 4 weekends in a row. They beat Kildare in the Division 2A final last weekend, and they're definitely playing another 3 games in a row. So they're playing 7 weeks in a row, 7 weekends in a row, 7 kind of big games. He kind of just said that it's insane to be playing 7 games in 7 weeks, just talking about, and it basically says about them being amateur players. How difficult is that sort of a scenario for a manager where, like, he would have had them really tuned up for last weekend? I'm sure I'd imagine they enjoyed themselves to some extent on Saturday night, and then you have to bring them back down and get ready for a leash and then get ready for the next week and get ready for the next week. How difficult is it from a manager's point of view to get that balancing act of, trying to get lads, keep them fit and keep them tuned, but not to put them over the top, make sure they're fresh for the big game at the weekend? Like, it's a difficult kind of situation, and like, there's no point in saying any different. I don't know why there was a league semi-final in 2A. Then they would have had a break week. It should have been probably the top 2 in the final. But how difficult of a scenario is that for a manager?
That's very, very difficult to manage because you're now entering into, I suppose, and this is thrown on, like looking at your physio and your S&C point of view, they can't get any top up done there. Your S&C can't get lads topped up. You know, a little break from contact matches and that type of recovery to just a training session and getting a bit of a blast into them. But then the bigger issue there is, like, you're 1 or 2, you know, lads away from blowing hamstrings. You know, that's the danger when you're playing matches week in, week out. And it's grand if you're used to that or you're conditioned with that. But, you know, for someone like Johnny there, who's putting a premium on, the next competition is the big one for him, you know, ultimately getting the lads lined up. They're now going to end up running on empty, and that may come against them in the end. So that's a very, very tough ask. I think, you know, you have to look at, sometimes they just do not look at these competitions practically and say, hold on now, you know, is that a very, very unfair hands to deal to one team while another team maybe is getting a bit of a breather for 2 weeks or whatever it is? But yeah, I think there's certainly layers are in competitions like a semi-final unnecessary for what's trying to be achieved here. And like, I think the only thing that should be there for everybody is you just want a level playing field. You don't want an advantage. Yeah, I think it's one thing if you have a championship where 4 teams go to the quarterfinals and you have a preliminary. Ideally, you want a setup where everybody has the same cut at, be if it's a fortnight or a week, that's grand. If everyone is playing week in, week out, that's grand. But I think what you don't want is that the other team can kind of get a chance to go look at that match last weekend, measure you, and they're nice and fresh coming into it, whereas you're now getting into a red zone with injuries.
Yeah, sure. The Mayo footballers are playing this weekend against Roscommon, who've been sitting back for the last week or two. Mayo won a big final. I'm sure Davy Burke and the Roscommon lads went up, analysed it, have the video, have it digested every which way. There's another thing as well. I just think when you win something, like I have a little doggy in the background here. When you win something, you should be like, Jesus Christ, there's no way winners should be punished at all. You should be able to enjoy it. Like, imagine if you won a league title with Kilkenny and you weren't able to go for a few jars or something because you're playing next weekend. And what do you remember most about your days, I'd imagine, is the crack. Ye boys landing over to Tommy Walsh's house or wherever it was that time. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think that's fundamentally wrong that you can't go and celebrate something.
Yeah, well, I suppose I wasn't part of the panel that time, and I mightn't have went, even though the house is technically in our parish, I think. But yeah.
That's more to do with club rivalries than anything else, I'd say.
Yeah. There's a bit of that going on, but no, I Jesus, like it's the one thing, you know, you see even too. You look at even the rugby lads now, like they go enjoy themselves, and I think that's a fundamental part of being part of a group like that. Is you have to have the crack, you have to have the releases. There's times where it'll tighten up and it'll move on, you know, and there's certain matches there, you know, right, we're going again next weekend, we can't. But something like that, a national title, like, is something that you know, you don't get them that often, so you have to enjoy them, and it's equally important in terms of building a spirit. I think that's what lads live for. They're in each other's company, and that's when they get to know each other, having a bit of crack together, and you know, coming back in the following Tuesday night or whenever it is, and just blow the system out and get the dirty diesel out and go again.
Yeah, we'll chat briefly about the league final now, Eddie. Before we got in talking about the game itself, Will O'Donoghue's going to miss the league decider, so he's been recommended for a 1-match ban after that incident, or a couple of incidents maybe, with Alan Tynan before throwing in the semi-final. The CCCC reviewed the incident and proposed Donoghue be suspended for 1 game, and early indications suggest that Limerick won't challenge the ban. Any thoughts on that? Just the ban itself, the fact that they're not going to appeal it. This will have ramifications later on in the year. Were he suspended again, he would serve a 2-match ban. Same situation as Kyle Hayes would. Now, traditionally, the last couple of years, Limerick have kind of picked up a decent amount of red cards in the league, and very, very few come summer, bar maybe Garrod Hegarty's red card. Outside of that, their discipline has been really good in championship. But what do you make of the red card, and what do you make of them not looking like they're not going to appeal it, and the fact that he's going to miss the game at the weekend?
Yeah, I think missing the game the weekend is not the end of the world for this Limerick squad. But like, if you're Willie Donoghue, I'm sure you don't want to give anyone in that squad a sniff of your jersey. So there's that issue. And despite the fact that from all of us looking in from the outside, you'd say, yeah, Will O'Donoghue is a nailed-on player on that Limerick team. But at the same time, for him, look, it's obviously disappointing. But look, the incident itself, you watch it once or twice, and yeah, I don't think there's any real intent. I think it's just there's a bit of jockeying going on, which you sometimes get at the clash, and it was just maybe there was a slight bit of a height difference in whatever way he swung or whatever. But I suppose the bigger thing, and I had a situation like this before coming out of a league final where I got a month and the championship was 5 weeks later. So look, you look at it from the outside and go, look, there's nothing to miss here. But the bigger ramification is that if you, and it can happen sometimes, you just fly into a tackle and you do mistime it, and suddenly you get a red. And I think that on its own you can deal with. But there's a double whammy then in that situation. So it just means you have to be ultra careful then. And I think that's the dilemma then, is are you at your best if you're going to be going, oh Jesus, I can't fly into tackles. But yeah, look, you can say by the letter of the law there is a strike there. But you know, I suppose it's, again, with all these things, is consistency. Will every one of those type incidents get dealt with in the same way? I'm not sure. But either way, like, I don't think there was a big contact either. But Limerick not appealing it, I suppose, is Yeah, I suppose you have to cut your cloth with those things. You have to look at it as merit and say, is there good evidence against me, or have I a realistic chance of overturning this? And I think that's what Limerick will have done, and they may have felt that, look, we haven't mitigation here to go with, and I think that's the big consideration. You said there's no point in going in. I think a lad said to me one time, don't just go appealing things for the sake of appealing it. You either appeal it because it's genuine and there's merit there, or there's a reason to accept fight it, or else you just take your medicine and you move on.
Just something you mentioned there. We would all see Will O'Donoghue as a guaranteed starter, but it's kind of like your team back in the day. I'd say he's probably, not that he's not bricking it or anything like that, but he's thinking, Jesus, someone else is getting my jersey now for 70 or 75 minutes and there's a chance to hold on to it. Chances are, if Barry Murphy comes in and he plays like unbelievably well, like he did in the second half against Tipperary, there's a fair chance he could start the first round of championship against Waterford, because that's the way Kiley generally operates, even though O'Donoghue is probably one of his biggest henchmen. I'd imagine it was the same with G, that he didn't want to be missing anything. Everyone thought you were guaranteed starters, but like I doubt Brian saw it that way.
No, never. And like, I remember seeing the lads who used to get injured and they'd be doing this extra run on the sideline. And I just went one day, I said, oh God, you know, sometimes we look, it'd be nice to get a couple of weeks, just a break from the heavy training. And then you look at the boys out on the sideline, you go, oh God, no, I'm glad I'm never injured. But quickly on that, in 2008, we went up and played G. And I think now I could be talking to one of the culprits anyway, but Michael Fennelly got injured up in Port Remember that? He was hurling. He was going well at the time. He looked as if he was going to nail down his starting place in 08. And I think he got a belt in the tooth and he broke a thumb or something like that.
Okay.
Derek Lynn got back in, and I think, you know, roared into the year, was so pivotal for us. And it was probably 2010 before Michael Fennelly really got back to where he was. So the point I'm making is you don't want to let up because someone gets a sniff of it. And I'd imagine there are guys in that Limerick squad literally tearing the jerseys off the starters' backs to get a place on it. I'd imagine it, and I put myself into that situation. If I am one of those guys that's 18, 19, 20, and you're getting, okay, you're the finisher and you're a part of the group, absolutely. But don't tell me you don't want to be starting. You don't want to be playing the big days. You don't want to get your jersey for an All-Ireland final and get in there and show the manager I can do it in All-Ireland final day. So there is an element to that, yeah, you will be so conscious of.
I'm like Shaggy. It wasn't me anyway, because I was rolling around. I was rolling around in the ground with Richie Hogan for most of that game. So it definitely wasn't me anyway. I think there was a rule change invented on the back of that. There was a couple of times Richie went running, and I just literally jumped on him. And like, I think it was later that year or in 2009, if you just pulled an opponent to the ground, it was now a yellow card anyway. So there might have been a rule change on my behalf there. Just looking at Kilkenny going into the league final, Eddie, have you liked what you've seen so far? Obviously, maybe a bit of a rude awakening against Tipperary that second day. Nice few new faces in. No Adrian Mullen, no TJ Reid. As you said there about, you know, getting to the league final in 07, you know, down a good cohort of players, particularly Ballyhale lads. It's probably a good sign Kilkenny have gotten this far and been, you know, they were comprehensive enough against Cork the last day, considering the faces that aren't in there at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think Derek will be very, very pleased with the league. I think when I seen the teams for that match in Nolan Park, I felt myself personally, I said, this is as good a chance as Tip are going to get now to beat Kilkenny in Nolan Park, because Tip rolled a strong team that day. Kilkenny were obviously trying a few new lads. And I think Derek has persisted with a few guys, you know, the likes of Billy Brennan has really stepped up and played all through the league, hit the freeze, which is a big ask for a young guy coming in. So he's been able to give lads game time. Garrod Dunn has got some. Timmy Clifford has got some. So I think all in all, you know, Mikey Butler is back into the loop there as well. So I think what he's trying to do now, even Hughie the last day at centre back, you know, we were all probably looking at that saying Hughie Lawler is our guaranteed full back. But now you're kind of going, God, is he going to have a look at that? And even going ahead to Sunday, wouldn't that be an interesting one, Hughie Lawler and Cian Lynch? But yeah, Derek will be very, very pleased, I think, with the league. He will face into this match knowing that, yeah, they're underdogs and they can have a right good cut off it. But God, he would love to win that league as well. He would love to know that he can, you know, take a bunch of young lads and the older, you know, the more established lads, the mix, bring them to Páirc Uí Chaoimh for a National League final and go toe-to-toe with a Limerick team that are very, very hard to beat. So he'll be delighted if he can really, really, you know, compete with them and maybe get something out of that match. But I think at the back of his mind, and look, Derek was a competitive guy himself, so don't be under any illusions. He's not going down there solely just to see where the boys are at. They'll go after this. They will try win it. And, you know, they won't die wondering anyway. And that's one thing that, in fairness, I thought the last day with Cork was when there was a bit of mess and started, Kilkenny stood firm, you know. So I think that's all he will look for them. And I think Sunday, like, what you have to bear in mind is I think maybe 4 weeks time, maybe less, Galway are coming to town. And that's where he wants to know, coming out of Sunday evening, who he has to supplement his squad and supplement. He probably has a starting 15 in his head for the championship, but he will want to know who he has to build his squad and know who he can bring in on any given day and contribute.
Kind of looks like he's marrying the old with the new. Pádraig Walsh is listed at 4, but he doesn't really play cornerback. He kind of plays that roving cornerback. He's the one that they try and get on the ball a lot of the time for if they are delivering a ball in long. Have you liked, it was maybe a bit frustrating against Tipperary at times where it broke down, but have you liked the way they've kind of married the old with the new, the longer deliveries when it's on, the working it through the lines when that's on?
Yeah, look, they are, and I think this is something that I think it's fair to say Kilkenny have been trying to build it in and do it for the last 5-6 years, and at times it's excellent, and at other times then it just fades away a small bit. So I think the trick with that is knowing when to use it short and when to go long. Like, I mean, I think you seen Cork the last day, like they done a few years ago, they were very quick to tag guys that they didn't want receiving the ball, and Pádraig Walsh is obviously there for that reason because he's good to see space. And yeah, in the league, I think the ball doesn't fly as much. There was a few bad distributions coming out of defence. Like, I felt we didn't put Cork to the sword with an extra man when we should have. You know, we left Cork hanging in that match. So that's the only little work on that you say, look, when you're getting the ball free like that and coming marauding forward, well, there has to be a good system of, you know, what you can't do is bring the ball out and then just scull it straight down to the edge of the square and where there's plenty of bodies. Like, you have to really try stretch a defence left and right. So Pádraig is probably the guy that Kilkenny will want to use in that role. But yeah, look, they're trying to do it for the right reasons. I think against Tip, they went too central with their passes and they were in at the ankles, whereas you'd like to think that during the summer, now you snap those passes, they're in the paw. I think Killian Buckley got a great point that day against Tip, which is the type of game that you're trying to play with, that give and go. And it's obviously to tidy it up and polish it up is going to be the key.
Yeah, Richie Hogan was back at 11 the last day. There's some talks that he might have picked up a bit of an injury in that Cork game. But just even to see him back, Eddie, how crucial would it fit Richie Hogan be to Kilkenny this year?
Sure, look, I think his presence alone now, look, obviously there's Richie has had a couple of injury issues over the last couple of years, which has curtailed his involvement. But in terms of a guy that's going to really take watching around the defence, like even the last day, I thought early doors, like he got a massive real Richie Hogan point at the start of that game. But his presence alone meant that Cork, you know, had to deal with him. Someone had to tag him. You cannot leave someone like that floating around picking up ball. And I think then, you know, maybe the area that, you know, was where he struggled. I thought the last day was when Cork were bringing the ball out, when they were running hard lines out of defence and wrapping around. I think that's where, you know, and you say, well, I know you don't want to, everyone has to do the work, but I think that's something that you don't, you know, Richie doesn't maybe have to do as much of. But at the same time, you know, what you can't have is that they're running rings out with it either. But I do think his presence on the pitch will be massive. You know, he can play out there because the brain will get him on the ball. But personally, I'd love to see him in close to the goal. I just think the unsettling presence of having him around that goal, because he is a live wire and his brain thinks faster than a lot of other lads in terms of hurling. You know, that goal he got against Galway the year, remember that he just scooped in the Leinster final.
Magic, yeah.
You know, that type of ability will make up for maybe the bit of speed that's not there as much. But I just think having him around, moving around the goal, he'd be very, very, he'd be a handful.
Is Hugh Lawler at 6 something that you think will be a long-term thing, or is it more while Richie Reid is out? I know he's dealing with concussion at the moment. It would be great to have him at 6, but you probably want him at 3 and 6, don't you, realistically?
Yeah, you probably do, all right. But yeah, it's a spot that he would be useful. I had him at midfield with the 21s the first year, and maybe then a wing back. And at midfield, he was brilliant because Hughie is very good. He'd be always there. I think there was a few he took as options off Murph the last day, and I think that's what he's good at. And Hughie would distribute the ball well. So that's what you get when you bring Hughie higher out the field. He's going to be that kind of guy. If he takes off running, you won't catch him. But obviously, his defensive ability at full back is massive. And I suppose that's the conundrum for Derek maybe is, he has to maybe look at, just in case Richie Reid doesn't make it, what are his options? So I think that's what it's about. It's looking at options, what can he do, and then someone to fill in behind him.
Just a quick one. There's some debate. Now, I don't think it's a debate, but do you think there's any hope of Billy Brennan hitting freeze in the championship over TJ Reid? Personally, I think there's no hope at this moment in time, but I think he'll be ready when that happens in, a year or next year or whenever it is. But he's almost like a clone of TJ from freeze. He's so good from place balls. He's, radar-like almost. But do you think there's any hope of him hitting freeze come championship?
I doubt it. I really doubt it. And look, it wouldn't be a bad thing either. I think that's where you'd love to see him getting going, like maybe, hitting a few in matches. But like TJ Reid is, he wants that. That's part of his game. It's a way of getting him involved in the game. So he will look at it that way. But that's something that I think the best man place to see that is going to be Derek himself, because he's watching the boys in training. He's watching what they're doing. And look, I'm sure TJ is clipping away, practicing his freeze, keeping sharp, which is what he'll do. But, it's what he'll see in training is ultimately it. But, I can't see it happening. If it is, maybe TJ might be just not as sharp on the freeze or something like that. But I think it'd be great to see a young lad like that. But there's a big difference maybe in league matches. And don't get me wrong, I'm well impressed with him. I'm really, really impressed with him. And he's a good joke. He'll play the championship. But I think there's a difference once you get to the cauldron of championship and you're dealing with, the real white heat there. It can sometimes, get in on lads. And that's the ultimate test for him. But I've no doubt in time he'll be ready for that.
We just have a commenter in here just asking, is Billy Brennan a bit light for the highest level of championship this year? He has bulked up a good bit, Eddie, I would say. He's going to get fair tests at the weekend. He's going to be either on Finn or Nash, which is going to be, or maybe Mike Casey or maybe Dan Morrissey. So he's going to be fairly thrown into it this weekend.
Yeah, well, any more bears on the square that we want to put on him? Yeah, that's going to be a massive test for him, and that's the ultimate. And in fairness, I've seen him in matches this year. The Waterford, the Tip, and the Cork match. You're going to get physicality no matter what way you go, but he doesn't seem to get too phased by it either. I see him there a few times, and that's all the learning. That's you'll see you get knocked a little bit easier when you're young and light like that. But at the same time, it's what he does next. That's all you want in a player. Okay, he might get the ball taken off him 2 or 3 times. Is he back hunting for the ball the next time? And yeah, I think that's something that doesn't happen overnight. A lad can fill out a fair bit in 12 months, but I still think when a man of, be it Mike Nash or, anyone, any lads, Ronan Mars, lads like that, and they leave every bit of their body inside you with a shoulder. It's a hell of a lot different. I don't care how big you are. When you get hit like seasoned championship campaigners with 4, 5, 6 years under their belts, they can hit if you're 6'4" and 15 stone, they can still hit you and they will lift you out of it. So look, that's there for everybody. But like you said there, we'll find out on Sunday.
Did you just when you're saying that? Do you ever regret getting in the Rock's way that time?
I was a human speed ramp that day. Yeah, I don't know.
I actually thought you did okay because he was going full steam. You kind of held your ground, didn't you?
I know I tilted over. All right. It's mad. It's gas the stupid things that maybe you think of sometimes, and maybe you'd say, well, the ambition was admirable. But I actually thought in my own head, I said, God, wouldn't it be great to stop him? And that was, honest to God, that's what went through my head as I was going towards him. And sure, I didn't put, you went in a small bit casual. And sure, the Rock is coming like that. There was only one thing was going to happen. And, oh, geez, yeah, no, it's gas. Thankfully, he didn't absolutely pulverize me with it. It was just more, I was tense. So he knocked me over and I bounced back up. Scarlet and embarrassed because you knew the whole place is going, oh, you big idiot. But yeah, no, it was there's a technique to that, and even still, I don't think even with 5 or 6 more years of experience, I don't know that I'd be able to stop that man.
It's amazing the things that you think you're able to do on the pitch. I remember getting a dart off. Bonner Matter. in a league game in '09, and I knew my shoulder was in bits. I knew it was in bits, but because he got me lovely, he'd noted me with shoulder lovely, I said, oh, geez, I may run into this lad. So I ran into him with me bad shoulder, and I'd say if it was going to be out for a month, I ended up being out for about 4 months after. The
Oh,
AC joint had
Jesus.
basically gone like that as a result of it. But you just think, geez, I can't just like get one up on me and just make an absolute clown of yourself. But
It's like the time you get winded and you jump up off the ground and you know your wind is gone and you're like, and you just go, don't show that they got you, and just nodding
yeah.
at a fella, and you actually can't wait to turn around and walk away and die.
Just quickly, Eddie, are there any particular matchups you're looking forward to at the weekend? I'd imagine the couple of minutes of a taste that David Blanchfield got of marking Big Garrod in the All-Ireland final last year. That's maybe something that might happen. Maybe, you might have Dara Corcoran tracking Tom Morrissey. As you said, you could have Hugh Lawler tracking Keane, Billy Drennan potentially on Sean Finn. Anything in particular stand out that you're really looking forward to?
I think, look, if Hegarty plays and Tom Morrissey plays, I mean, they're two guys that are so pivotal. Look, where do you start with who's important to Limerick and all that? It's maybe then who picks up Gillan. Is Tommy Walsh going to pick up Gillan? So that's a test for him. And I think that's what, if I'm Derek, I'd be really prodding the guys to go have a cut. Don't die wondering. Don't play tractor. I have this term of tractors and trailers where you follow a lad around. I think you can't do that. I think you have to be up and you're marking them. And if you can get a ball off Hegarty or Tom Morrissey like Blanchfield, you try hurt them. You try hurt them with a point and make sure then that they don't get something the next time. But yeah, Blanchfield looked custom made for Hegarty in terms of his athletic ability and the left hand maybe being able to, use the hurling the left hand to jockey for possession on those high balls. But ultimately, it's Hegarty's movements that he has to really. So if you have ambitions right now, if Kilkenny have an ambition of winning All Ireland this year, they obviously have to get through their campaign. But the probability is that if you're going to beat Limerick, then you have to take on these lads. So this is a great opportunity for them to have a cut and see where they're at and see where, what they need to improve on.
Just quickly, that tractor and trailers thing, that's essentially that you're tagging a lad, but that you're not just following around, that you're actually having an impact on the game as well as that. You're not just tagging him, if you get me, that you're trying to be proactive. You're not just a stopper, but you're trying to change the game in the sense of getting on the ball. If you're marking Hegarty, it's not just stopping him from getting the ball, it's trying to maybe get on the ball and impact play.
Well, the term, I use tractors and trailers in a bad sense, in that you can't beat a trailer where the forward is towing you around and he just goes where you're playing the game on his terms and you're just following him, kind of maybe playing safe a little bit. It's not good. So what I would be saying is that the modern game involves that if you go and get a ball, you're going to be detached from your marker. So you might have the job for this. Say, listen, I want you on Hegarty, I want you on Morrissey, or whatever the play is. But you have to be able to go and play, not be afraid to lose him, not worry and say, well, I'm watching him and he's standing at the sideline and the boys are running amok inside. Like, you have to be able to know what's happening and know what he's doing and be proactive and be brave and say, look, if I can go up and get a point. But obviously it's what you do after that is the key. And the example I use so many times, and I spoke about this several times, is you have an image of Jack Fagan, I think maybe 2 years ago, putting the ball over the bar and he's backing back and the camera is still on him. Next thing you turn around and Tom Morrissey's at the other side of the pitch, his direct marker, and he's putting the ball over the bar. So straight away, that brilliant point from a wing back is cancelled out. So that's the way hurling is. It's just ultimate hurling at the moment, is that, and Limerick are so good. That's the key. I think that's your target area. Limerick's restart is excellent.
Yeah, they're so good. They're so good and so economical with the ball, aren't they? And as you say there, they take a hammer blow, it could be a goal or whatever. Quaid puts the ball into a spot that someone moves into, and all of a sudden, a 3-point swing is now 2 points, and you're on the back foot, and they're going after your puck out the next time almost. They're so good at it, aren't they? And they're so good. I don't know, Eddie, I've never seen a team adapt to problems mid-game as well as they do. Like, you've played in games as well where, you're beating all ends up. It seems like you're just, when a lad kind of is nearly, you just feel like your marker has more energy than you. The team you're playing against has more energy than you. And it's usually not till the next time you play them that you get to, exact revenge or whatever. But Limerick are able to, like the Tip game the last day, they're able to turn things mid-game. It's phenomenal, really.
Yeah, and like, if anyone showed another, challenge, like we've seen a few times where teams have stifled this Limerick outfit, but not for a full match. tips, puck outs, and what they done with that was excellence down in Thurles. Their movement, everything. But Limerick were able to just adjust a little bit, and it's a small little thing, like saying pushing up on the puck outs rather than retreating to the 45 with the 3 full forwards and the other lads outside, which is what their kind of standard setup is. And almost coaxing you into coming out against them short. But yeah, look, I think it's what it is that when they play, like there's a primary run, then there's a secondary run. Like they don't just, there's not an end move with them. So when Hegarty makes a run or Tom Morrissey makes a run, they're okay, that didn't work out. Nicky Quaid probably has to have 3 options. Then they're thinking the next move. And they always seem to have a next thing of what they do next. It's not just going, well, that's the end of it. It's options, options, options all the time. And they're able to just, their in-game smarts is really good. And that comes from probably nights after night doing it below on their own pitch where they're being presented with issues, they're being presented with problems, and then themselves talking it out. Now, that's very, very hard in the middle of a match. We've seen the last day, the breather at half time obviously helped them reassess, which is important. But they are able to do it in match as well. They're able to communicate with each other and do little bits and pieces or whatever it is to change it up, which is a very, very hard thing to do. Because like you said there, when a team is getting you and they have a run on you, it's hard to fix that.
Just on Limerick quickly, Eddie, have you been impressed with what you've seen in the league? The likes of Donegal Dálig coming in, Micheál Houlihan, Cottle O'Neill back, who looks like he could make a really big play, I think, to be in the starting team. You've Shane O'Brien as well. Like, it's a funny one as well. They're a winning team, but they're not stagnating, if you get me. Like they've dropped a couple of lads that have been around the squad for a while, have a couple of All-Ireland medals in their back pocket. They seem to have the luxury of parachuting guys in now. O'Dálig has scored something like 110 or 112 from play in the league. Looks like he could be an option off the bench. The other 3 lads the same, and potentially O'Neill from the start. And that's not to mention Conor Boylan, who come on and got a point in the All-Ireland final. Like, there's a lot of options there.
Yeah, and even the last day, look, Garrod arrived on for a blood sub, and they didn't
Not
even,
a bad blood sub,
they didn't even need to leave, man. O'Dálig has been very good. Or Dowling, what I seen him playing with Munleen this year, like he's a real central player. He's a good player. I think what he is though is it's this typical, what Limerick, what we come to get and know with this Limerick team is these impact subs. You look at him, he is a ball of energy. He never stopped against Tip Hunt, and even it's the bigger thing is, and I know it's one of their metrics that they mark themselves on, is their ability to hunt down and turn over backs. He was like like he was hunting everything. Anytime there's a tip man near him, he went hunting. And some of them are very good at standing them up. But I think that's Limerick have added to their squad in a big, big way now. I think that's, and you look at the guys that are coming in, like you look at even where Colin Coughlin now is. Cottle O'Neill now has to be going, I want to start on this team because, he had, I think a couple of good points against Kilkenny in the All-Ireland final to see the job out the last day. He understands the movement that they do in that half-forward line. He plays centrally as an 11, but I think you could play him on either wing as well. He seems to me, of all the lads there, he seems to understand the movement they do around that area as equally as good as the lads that are there. And what a luxury of riches to say, will we put Keane back out midfield or do we leave him centre forward? I personally think centre forward is the place because he's just going to hurt you so much from there with his hurling brains. And even the last day, I thought he doesn't look anywhere near as snappy and as fit as he can be, but his hurling brain is just out of this world. Like he's just seeing things behind him, and he attracts lads in, and he's able to just get the ball off every time. But yeah, all in all, you'd say they're in a good place, strong squad, competition there, and it's going to take a serious effort to beat them.
I haven't even mentioned David Reedy yet. He hasn't featured since coming off against Cork the first day. So there's
Richie English, another fella then as well. Like played a lot.
That's grand. We just have another All-Star to throw into the full backline if anything goes wrong. How do you see the game going at the weekend, Eddie? And just on Limerick haven't been beaten in a final under John Kiley. I think a final of any description, be it Munster League, Munster, or All Ireland. Like, are you poking the bear if they're beaten in the league final at the weekend, or does it set some sort of doubt in that your nearest rival, the team that brought you to within 2 points in the All Ireland final last year, maybe has one up in you? Like, I think Kilkenny probably have most to gain from the weekend.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think Kilkenny have a lot to gain. I think Jesus, don't get me wrong. I'd love this Kilkenny team to go down there and win a National League in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against the All Ireland champions. It would be brilliant for them because From my experience, it makes you grow. It brings you bouncing into training a bit more. It gives you a bit of belief. And I think that's the one thing that John Kiley would be kind of in the back of his mind mindful of, that, in 18, Kilkenny were very, very close to them. Maybe it could have gone either way, and they ultimately kicked on. They hurt them in 19. Last year, despite how well Limerick got a return off their puckouts, Kilkenny were still within 2 points. So I think the one thing he won't want to do is give them any sort of a sniff psychologically that, they can come at us. In the broader scheme of things, will it have an impact on this Limerick team going into a Munster Championship? I'm not sure it would have a devastating effect on them. I think it would probably even steal their heads a tiny bit more. But I definitely think they are not going to anything other than try win this match. And I do think if they get going, and with the Kilkenny team, minus TJ and Adrian Mullen, I think, and I suppose I'm conscious of saying this, you'd have people leaping and shouting, but I think if we can keep that to 6 points or thereabouts, I think there'd be nothing wrong with that. I think that'd be a really respectable performance if we can go down there. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to win, but I think if we go down and go toe to toe with Limerick and have a right good battle with them, and it's less than 6 points, I think there's no shame in that.
Just lastly, before I let you go, Eddie, and I'm putting you on the spot here a bit, your top 3 in Munster and your top 3 in Leinster.
Top 3 in Munster, Limerick. Jesus, I have a feeling it's going to be Clare and Tip.
Okay, so Waterford and Cork to miss out.
What I seen the last day with Cork, I don't know. There's still something a little bit amiss in them. Waterford, I don't know. I think they're a bit all over the place. But look, they're going to come with something. But I suppose they could bolt, and who knows. Leinster then. It's hard to see. Look, I think it's Kilkenny, Galway, and then after that, then it depends what Wexford and what realistically it's probably between Wexford and Dublin. And I know that's, you might say, geez, with respect to everyone else, but like, you're going to have a few twists and turns. I think there's a couple of big twists and turns in store in Leinster, and it could be that Antrim or Westmeath could cause a problem there for someone. You'd say, look, anyone who has to go to Westmeath, I can tell you it's not a tough place. It's not an easy place to go. So you wouldn't know. I think there'll be a twist and turn, but I do expect then I'll go with Wexford to just get through, maybe as the third.
Yeah, hopefully, from Leinster's point of view, wouldn't it be great if Antrim did cause an upset? Wouldn't it be great if Westmeath could build on the? Hopefully, it's not just a case of Antrim playing Westmeath to see who goes, to avoid who goes down. Hopefully, there'll be points picked up along the way. It would make it so interesting if that was the case.
That'd be brilliant. If you have, after maybe 3 rounds in Leinster, you have all teams with points and all teams haven't been beaten. That just makes for a really, really brilliant finale and conclusion to the Leinster Championship, because there's no team then can kind of get to the end and be kind of comfortable, I think, and know that we can afford to maybe draw here. I think that'd be great to just have it cutthroat, a bit like the Munster Championship, that there's still so much to play for at the end. And I think that's a possibility. I think it's a very real possibility.
That's the job, Eddie. Thanks a million for your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
No bother, Mixer. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy.
Cheers, Ed. Good man. I'm just going to fly through a few bits of news here. We're supposed to have Niall Moran, but I know he's farming every morning, so he could be a bit caught. He hasn't dialed in yet, I don't think, anyway. But we have Jason Byrne from The Sun coming on in a couple of minutes just to chat through a bit of football. But we'll fly through. There was loads of news this weekend, or loads of news coming into this weekend. So Austin Gleeson is not expected to be fit to start Waterford's opening 2 Munster Championship games this month. The 2016 hurler year suffered a hamstring tear against Tipperary last month, and it appears that time will run out and they're making it back for Waterford's round-robin games against Limerick and Cork. Shane McNulty, who broke a bone in his foot in the same game, and Irda Daly, who suffered a hamstring injury against Kilkenny, are also in the same boat. So that's a difficult position for Davy Fitz to be in if he's going to be without Ozzy for those first 2 games, and it looks like he's going to be without Shane McNulty and Irda Daly as well. Dublin have also got 2 of their Leinster Senior Hurling Championship games moved to Croke Park. So since the round robin was brought in, Dublin have only ever played in Parnell Park, but they're moving 2 games to Croke Park. They obviously feel it will suit their style and suit their the makeup of their squad a lot better. So they will be playing. They made a request. The Dublin County Board made a request to the Provincial Council, and they've agreed that the round 3 game, round 5 games against Wexford and Galway have been switched from Parnell Park to GAHQ. So the other fixture against Westmeath in round 2 on April 29, that remains at the Dooney-Carney venue. Rory Gallagher came out with some choice enough comments after the Division 2 football final last weekend about the potential for, I think, 5 of his players who are under 20s, the potential that they would miss out on playing senior or could miss out on playing senior due to games being within that 7-day window between under 20 and senior. But the Ulster Council has bowed to Derry boss Rory Gallagher's criticism and has brought forward to this Saturday the Ulster under 20 football semi-final between Derry and Donegal. The decision means that 5 players in Rory Gallagher's senior panel are clear to play in both the under 20 semi-final this weekend and the seniors Ulster quarter-final against Fermanagh on Saturday week. It also looks like David Fitzgerald is not going to be available for Clare to play against Tipperary in the opening Munster Championship game. Clare hurler David Fitzgerald's appeal to have his 1-match ban overturned was rejected by the GAA's Central Appeals Committee, CAC, on Tuesday night. So they could potentially go to the DRA, but it looks like at the moment he's going to be missing for that big, obviously, you know, the first game is probably the biggest game. If they can get a win there, they're on the pig's back. You could say the same from a Tipperary point of view. So Fitzgerald obviously would be a massive loss in that regard. And at the moment, it looks like he's going to be missing. The Tipperary Senior Hurling Championship draw was made, and it includes a group of death. Eddie's actually involved with Mike Harkey, Boris's manager there, playing against Ross Gray, who Eddie was involved with as coach last year, Tommy Vara and Kilrowan McDonough's, the defending champions. Drummond Inch, J.K. Brackens, Nina Airog and Mullinahone are in Group 1. But Group 3 sees Upper Church Strumban, Lockmore Castleiney, Holy Cross Ballycal and Temple Derry Kenyans. And Group 4, the group of death, Killadangan, Clonoulty Rossmore, Bursley and Turtle Sarsfields. That is an awful group. And often playing those various teams in challenge games at Burr, you know you're going to get your fill of it playing either to 4 of them. So I think only 2 is going to come out of that. So yeah, Killadangan, Clonoulty Rossmore, Bursley and Turtle Sarsfields, all county champions in the last 4 or 5 years, all pitted into one group. So that's going to be a fascinating Tipperary Senior Hurling Championship. Some other bits of news as well. It's a nice story. The Tyrone under 40s footballers have bolstered their ranks. So Sean Kavanagh, Martin Penrose and Joe McMahon are among a raft of new recruits to Tyrone's over 40 squad for a big push to win a 3rd successive All-Ireland title. They will join Conor Gormley, Stephen O'Neill and Kieran Gurley in a formidable lineup that begins the defence of the Masters title next month with a trip to London to take on the Exiles. I'd say there'd be good crack on that trip. Given it's not a senior squad, I'm sure they'll enjoy themselves plenty. And by all accounts, Rian O'Neill and Andrew Mernon are not far away from full fitness for Armagh's Ulster opener. That's according to Armagh coach / selector Kieran McKeever. Just an interesting one as well. So 26, you can only name you have to name a 26-man squad now for all championship games, and that 26-man squad is going to be published every Friday afternoon by the GA. That's what's been said anyway. So counties must submit a 26-man squad to the GA by Thursday mornings, which will then be published on Friday afternoons, allowing players to be informed at Thursday night training. Up to 4 standby players can also be registered in specific circumstances, be it illness or otherwise. I think are just some of the specific circumstances involved there as well, and bereavement and things like that. Joe Canning also has a championship structure idea. So Galway legend Joe Canning says he will back a group stage championship, which would combine the league and championship into a single competition. The Portumna man also believes the club could be played first and the inter-county season second in the split season. It should be a Champions League kind of thing where all the teams play each other home and away, 10 or 12 teams playing for Liam McCarthy, and just run it off. The club needs to be played at the start of the year and the inter-county second. You're picking on last year's championship in inter-county, not this year's championship. That's a bit skewed. So flip that and combine them both, league and championship, together. I think I like the Champions League style idea. The provincial championships, obviously, there needs to probably be some way. Munster Championship is still huge. Leinster probably to a lesser extent, but we definitely, I I definitely am happy. I'd be happy with the way the club season is. I think club players are delighted with the way it is at the moment. I think if it was played off, rushed in the early part of the season, particularly in really bad pitches, I think Inter-county's able to be accommodated in, you know, county grounds around the country. I think club games, there could be quagmires all around the country in certain type of pitches. I have to say, I like it the way it is at the moment, and I don't think that should be changed. But interesting to hear him coming out with those comments. There's obviously some other hurling action this weekend as well, with the start of the Joe McDonagh Cup. So Down played Kerry and Ballycran. So Kerry have been beaten in the last 3 Joe McDonagh Cup finals, and they're coming up against Down this weekend. Down were poor in 2A, and Kerry got to a semi-final where they were beaten by, you know, a couple of points by Offaly. I'm sure they'll fancy their chances. The Joe McDonagh has that interesting little caveat this year, where if Kerry win the Joe McDonagh, they're straight into Munster. There's no playoff or anything like that, so that's going to be fascinating to see if they're able to get up. Probably one of the most competitive Joe McDonaghs in recent years. So Offaly play Laois this Saturday, so we mentioned Offaly are in the middle of a 7-game and a run streak, so this is going to be the 5th game in a row after winning the 2A last weekend, and they're playing Laois. These will be 2 of the favourites for the competition, and always a bitter enough rivalry with our near neighbours. Kildare, it's a really interesting tie. Kildare have to make the trip to Netwatch Cullen Park this Saturday to play a Carlow side who obviously won the first ever Joe McDonagh, and I'm sure they'll be keen to bounce back after kind of a stuttering kind of a league. Kildare trying to bounce back from being beaten by Offaly in that 2A final last weekend. They were brilliant in the first half, probably left a lot of chances behind, and were outfought in the second half. Offaly really put the shutters up there. So it's going to be interesting to see that Kildare do not want to be left on the back foot after the start of the Joe McDonagh, and it could be easy. You could easily see how a hangover from that final could carry into the McDonagh Cup. So hopefully not from a Kildare point of view, but Carlow will give them their fill of it this weekend. There's also Leinster Under-20 Championship this weekend. You have Wexford against Kilkenny, that's in Wexford Park, and you have Dublin against Galway, that's in Mayo and Burt. And the Leinster Under-20 Championship as well, you have Westmeath against Antrim. There's plenty of games in the Under-20 Championship tonight actually as well. Meath play Offaly and Trim. Laois play Carlow, that's in O'Moore Park. Tomorrow you have Good Friday, you have a raft of minor championship games as well. Dublin play Kerry, that's in O'Moore Park. Offaly and Wexford is in Brennan's Park. Grant Heating, St. Brendan's Park, we got a big sponsor there, a local business. The Grant Boilers, they're involved with the club now and sponsoring Brendan's Park. So the other games, then you have Laois against Antrim in Abbottstown, Kilkenny against Galway in Nolan Park, and in the knockout round 1, the Leinster Minor Hurling Championship, you have Westmeath against Carlow, Kildare against Meath, and then in the Tier 2 of the Leinster Hurling Championship, you have Kildare against Kerry, and that's also in O'Moore Park. There's a host of championship games in football this weekend. Kind of a funny, peculiar kind of a scenario when you have, a league competition finishing in hurling and you have football championship starting the same weekend. But that's kind of the way of the world at the moment, and it's mad kind of at this time of the year for champions. So funny, kind of peculiar for this time of the year, first weekend in April basically, or the second weekend, for there to be loads of championship games going ahead. But that's the way of the world now. We're trying to fit it all in the split season. We have couple of Connacht quarterfinals. Jason Byrne will be coming on in a minute, and we'll chat a bit more about Roscommon and Mayo. But 2 big Connacht senior football quarterfinals. So you have London against Sligo. That's in Ruislip at 3 p.m. on Saturday. So they last met in the Connacht Championship in 2018 when Sligo won by 10 points. 5 years earlier, London recorded their first championship success over Sligo, winning by a point. They later went on to beat Leitrim to qualify for the Connacht final for the first time, where they lost to Mayo. So Sligo know what it's like to be going over to Ruislip, know that it can be a bit more than a kind of a banana skin. So they'll be very, very cautious going over there. They're obviously coming over there having won the Division 4 last weekend as well. Showed good form throughout Division 4 as well. So they'll be keen to kick on there. So their last 5 championship meetings, Sligo won 121 to 111 in 2018. London won by a point famously in Ruislip in 2013, 112 to 14. And Sligo beat London 217 to 7 points when they met in the Connacht quarterfinal in 08. So history would suggest that Sligo should come away victorious there, but I'm sure they'll be definitely on guard. New York and Leitrim make the trip to New York. They obviously do so without Emlyn Mulligan as well, who retired in recent weeks. So they won't have him for that trip. I think he said he was going over as a spectator, actually. And Leitrim had a really close call in their last championship clash with New York 5 years ago, winning by a point in extra time. So their last 5 championship meetings, Leitrim won 19 points to 115 after extra time in the quarter-final in 2018. In 2013, they had a comprehensive win, 419 to 7 points. In 2008, they had a 5-point win, 17 points to 12. And in 2003, Leitrim had a 14 points to 12 win over New York. So they'll definitely be on guard there as well. And by all accounts, in recent years, New York have a few decent kind of ex-inter-county players. You don't really know what you're going to be facing off against probably until you get over there. And in the inter-county scene now, where it's all information and you want to know exactly what you're going to be facing or who's going to be facing, New York are kind of tricky proposition in that respect. So that's going to be fascinating to see. And I'm sure Andy Moran will have the Leitrim guys on guard for that game. Armagh are also out this weekend in the Ulster Senior Football Championship preliminary round, so they're going to have to go the long way if they're to win an Ulster title. I don't think they've been in a final since 2008. They've had an abysmal record, you'd have to say. In Ulster Championship under Kieran McGeeney. I'm not even sure if they have a win under his reign. They've really struggled, and I'm delighted that I'm no longer by myself here. Delighted to be joined by Jason Burns from the Irish Sun. Jason, how are you?
How are you, Mick? Can you hear me?
I can hear you 100%. Yeah, your dulcet Donegal tones.
Good. Sorry, I'm a bit late. This is a new laptop.
No panic at all. No panic. I'm going to land you in the deep end straight away. You're obviously a Donegal man, Jason. Fair to say things aren't particularly rosy up there at the moment. It's a tricky kind of a time. A lot of things going on. Crow Park are kind of, I wouldn't say maybe investigating is not the word, but they're looking into Donegal's affairs and things like that. Can you just give us a bit of background about things that are happening in the county at the moment?
Yeah, it's there's a lot going on, Mick. It's funny. I was at the Galway Kerry game a couple of weeks ago when all this had just kind of kicked off, and we were in the press box at half time, and I had John Casey on to me, I had Liam Silk on to me, I had Big Barry Cullinan on to me. Oh, what's going on in Donegal? What's going on in Donegal? And they were nearly kind of flabbergasted by the whole thing. And I was talking to Peter Canavan about it yesterday as well, and he kind of made the point, in fairness to him, that it could happen in any county, because when elite athletes and maybe amateur volunteers are trying to work together, maybe sometimes it doesn't always mix in the best way. I know there's been a couple of pieces written about this, but we can get to that in a minute. But basically, it all kind of kicked off last year when the search for the manager job was going on. Declan Bonner took 5 or 6 weeks to announce his decision to step away after the qualifier defeat to Armagh. And that situation kind of dragged on, and it was eventually resolved when Paddy Carr got the job. His appointment raised a few eyebrows. A lot of people presumed that Rory Kavanagh had the job. Obviously, a legend of the county, massive player when Donegal won the 2012 All-Ireland. Was doing great things with his club, got them to a county title last year, or got them to the 2022 county title and got them to the final again last year. That whole thing fell apart. It transpired that he had this big dream backroom team featuring Carl Lacey and Jim McGuinness and a few of the other lads from that school as well. So that all collapses, and then Carl is head of the academy and everything's running great, and the academy is being heralded as one of the best in the country, and the likes of the Limerick Hurling Academy wouldn't even match it in terms of organisation and structure and the amount of coaches that he had. So he resigns then in February, and all of his coaches go with him. And there seems to be no chance of mediation here at all. I know there were initial attempts to try and fix the whole thing, and it never came to pass. Now the county board have taken a massive kicking in all this, and I must say that even though they're not all innocent, I do know some great people working in the board, the volunteers. They dedicate so much of their time to this, and they've been thrown under the bus a wee bit here as well. So I'm sure there's faults on both sides. It's clearly evident that a lot of the truth still has to come out. The best in-depth piece I've seen in the whole thing, and he put massive work into it, was Carol Kane's piece in the Irish News a couple of weeks ago. If anyone wants to Google that, he really, really did have it pasted together really, really well. Like he put phenomenal effort into that. He spoke to so many people, who it's a difficult situation for everyone all around, but the academy still isn't back up and running. Croke Park,
and that has long-term effects as well, Jason, as well.
Oh, absolutely, Michael. I think the academy was meant to be reconvene again for the year on the 1st of March. Like, you have hundreds of kids who aren't playing football, and Donegal is in an area where soccer is massive, and there's so many times when so many young stars who've been huge prospects in the Gaelic football field have gone to play for Finn Harps, or have gone to play for Sligo Rovers, or have gone to play for Derry City, or have gone off to college and just slipped off the radar. And, the academy was a great way of keeping young lads on the Gaelic football field and putting them on that pathway to the county senior team, which a lot of our current players have come through. Our underage success hasn't been great. We only got to one minor All-Ireland final. That was in 2014 when everything was great. Our under-20 team is still up and running, thank God. They have a big game against Derry this weekend. They beat Antrim last Wednesday night in penalties. That was a big result for them because they were kind of behind for a lot of the game, and they showed huge character to pull that out of the fire. So you have Leo McLuhan and Eamon McGee in there, thank God, still keeping that fire burning. But the four masters and the Milford clubs called for 2 county board resignations at county committee meeting this week at the start of the week. But that's been postponed until Croke Park's external review into everything across the board in Donegal GA is complete, and that's due to be
around May. Is that around May? Yeah,
the end of May. The end of May. I think that actually the 31st of May. I think that's due to be completed. So Tom Ryan and a cohort from Croke Park were at the county committee meeting this week, and hopefully everyone can move forward now and rebuild. And it'd be great if Carol Lacey came back in to oversee everything that he put in place, because this was his baby, this was his brainchild. He knows the whole thing inside out. Like, I was even talking to David Hurley about this last week when he was comparing kind of talking about Derek Ling taking the Kilkenny job in the sense that he kept X amount of coaches, strength and conditioning, dietitian and doctors in place. When there's that bit of continuity, it doesn't take that long to rebuild. So when Carol comes back in, he's just steering the ship that he built himself. And I think I don't think anyone's under any illusions that he's the best man for the job. So someone's going to have to swallow their pride here somewhere, Mick. There's a couple of people on the county board who evidently don't see eye to eye with Carol. So, those bridges are going to have to be mended fast, because at the end of the day, the county board officials are moving heaven and earth to make this happen. And, they have taken a lot of kicking, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is the biggest losers here are all the young footballers who are not taken to the fields up in Donegal in the last nearly 2 months now. So just hope it can be sorted out, because the long-term repercussions here can be massive. The longer this goes on, the longer those repercussions are going to be felt. So it just needs to be sorted out. And Jim McGuinness threw the biggest grenade into the whole thing. Like, there was silence and a vacuum for a long time.
That set the place alight, didn't it?
Yeah, when he talks, like, that's it. Like, everyone listens, and that's when ears start to prick up, and that's when people say, okay, right, this is a big deal. So, he came in and said that the county board hadn't phoned him back last year when he volunteered to help any manager that did come in after the Rory Kavanagh House of Cards collapsed. So, and then you had Paddy Carr, of course, resigning as manager, before the last league game. So,
and Michael Murphy's retirement. There's been some amount of things happen, like, really. Since Bonner stepped away, there's been some amount happened in that 7 or 8 months since.
It's been a lot. Like, in fairness to Paddy Carr, he had no luck. Like, he was only in the job no time in Murphy announced his retirement, and that kind of shocked everybody. But if Michael felt he couldn't give it 100%, he couldn't give it 100%. You have to take him at his word for it, because those are the standards that he set for himself and that he would have set for the group the whole way through his career. And then you have Paddy McBurdy getting that hamstring injury in the Tyrone game, and Ryan McHugh, another vital player, such a talent, misses the whole league campaign as well. So in fairness to Paddy Carr, he didn't have much luck either. So it's up to them now to pick it up and try and salvage some pride now in the championship, and hopefully they can. That game against Down now in Newry on the 22nd or 23rd, I think, of April is just absolutely massive. So if they can go out and win that game, you know, it just, they have to let their football do the talking now in terms of the senior team. So if they go out and win that game, a lot of the doubts and a lot of the noise will quell. So hopefully they can do that.
I've been in that situation with Offaly, Jason, where there's not any bad news coming around the place. The one thing I will say is that when you know, if the house is in order, as it has been with us for the last couple of years, the wheel can turn quite quickly. So it's just a matter of coming to a resolution and getting everyone back on board or whatever. But it sounds like it's going to take a bit of time. Sounds like it's going to take a fair bit of time. Just to talk about action on the field. Speaking of, you know, maybe teams waiting in the wings and that, the Rossies are definitely waiting in the wings for Mayo, I'd say. A difficult situation for Mayo, win the league title last Sunday, playing a Connacht quarter-final against, you know, their old rivals, and a team, a county who's beaten them the 3 times they've won the league. The last 3 times they've won the league, the Rossies have beaten them in the championship. So they'll definitely be on guard. That's going to be a fascinating game.
It is. I'm going to it as well, Michael. I can't wait. There's a couple of funny wee stats there. Like the last time Mayo beat Galway in a league final was in 2001, and we all know what happened that September.
Yeah.
There's a couple of funny wee stats there, depending on how superstitious you might be. Would you be into piss oaks at all?
Yeah, piss dogs. I'd be waving at magpies like Jack O'Connor.
No, all joking aside, like, it's an ideal situation for Roscommon, really, because Mayo have been in the spotlight for the last week or so, going up, winning the league. I know, in fairness to Kevin McStay, you know, the champagne was on ice. There was no lap of honour. They took a few photos with the trophy on the field after the game, and they went straight into the changing room. None of the Mayo players even spoke to us in the print media down outside the dressing rooms.
You were down trying to hover up a few bits and pieces like I would have been myself. But that probably... you know, it's not ideal for us, but it's probably they're trying to just move on, aren't they? They've got. Listen, I thought they shouldn't be put in that position, in my opinion. But they're trying to move on and just trying to they're trying to put all their focus back on whatever. Basically, they don't want everybody telling them how great they are, and they just want to move on to the game this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and just having a week to prepare. Like, sure, it's so difficult. Like, you know, that's a big switch to kind of flick. You know, because especially the fact that they were playing Galway at Croke Park as well, they just wanted to go and win that game and focus on this Sunday. But you know, you asked me about the Rossies. It is a great situation for them because they're nearly coming in under the radar. Like they consolidated their league position very, very early. You know, David Burke has obviously got a serious kick in them. Like after maybe things kind of fizzled out for them a wee bit last year. I actually haven't seen Roscommon in the flesh. I always try and use the league to kind of see as many teams as you can in the flesh. I actually didn't get to see Roscommon once, so I'm kind of limited in terms of what I can say about them because you're just restricted to kind of Sunday game clips and whatnot. But he seems to have gotten a lot out of Enda Smith, which kind of coincides with what Kevin McStay is getting out of Aidan O'Shea in terms of a big physical player really thriving in that environment. You know, he just seems to be he seems to really galvanize the group, Davey. Like he must be some manager, like in fairness to him, and he's only so young as well. He's younger than me and you anyway.
He is. He's a year or two. Yeah. He's Davey's full of energy. He's all action, and when he's in something, he's 100% in. Like I remember him saying, like he's no issue, like, you know, driving to watch gym sessions at 6:30 in the morning and stuff like this. He'd do anything, and I'd say he'd feel the call at any hour. I think he said he was at a children's party a couple of years ago. One of his kids were at, and he just had to go outside and take a call, and she was on the phone for about 45 minutes. He said he missed most of the party. Like he's all in. Even he was involved with the Minute Sigerson as well at the time. But like he has really got them humming, and the way they had 3 wins on the board straight away, but even just to get, you know, to get a victory near the end of the league as well, it finished like it's gas. It finished Connacht 1, 2, 3 in Division 1. You know, so while they started well, it didn't so much fizzle out, but at least they finished with a bit of a flourish, and now we're going into the championship kind of full, like they're really full of optimism.
Yeah, and like to bury that yo-yo tag that they had in the league for so long, to bury that early as well, it must have been so important for them, just in terms of the mindset, you know, and you know, telling the group that we belong here in Division 1, we belong in 3rd place in the table, and you know, they could have been in a league final so easily as well. Like, I think they finished on 8 points. Like, they would have absolutely ripped your hand off for that in the middle of January. Do you know what I mean? And I must say as well, bringing Mark McEwen as a coach was a very, very shrewd move. He was in with the Donegal Ladies footballers last year, and they had nothing but praise for him in terms of what he brought to the table, and you know, his tactics and his drills on the training field as well. So, you know, again, Mark's only 33 maybe max.
He'd be cut from the same cloth as Davy, I'd say, age-wise and stuff. They have the same kind of philosophies, I'd say,
He's just mad for road as well. And, you know, I'd imagine he's made a big difference and brought a real different dynamic to them as well. So it's lovely for them coming in under the radar. But I actually didn't realise until a couple of weeks ago the game was on at McHale Park. I thought it was on in the Hyde. So that's a big game changer as well. You could have 30,000 there on Sunday easily. You know, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a fantastic occasion. People are talking about the death knell for the provincial championships, but you know, it might be the case in Leinster and Munster, but that game on Sunday now will be ding ding dong. And you know, Galway are still in a lovely position as well. You have to remember, like, they flew off to Portugal on Monday morning for a warm weather training camp. I'm sure they'll be back. I'm sure PJ will be there on Sunday bright and early to just sit back and take in what happens and see who they're going to play next. So Connacht's just so up in the air at the minute. Anything could happen. But yeah, Roscommon are in just a fantastic position, and you know, they'll be going all gung-ho. Like, it'd be interesting to see how Mayo approach it. Are we going to see the same thing that we saw for them throughout the league in terms of that kicking game, and how are they going to deal with Aidan O'Shea? We were at the RT Championship launch yesterday, and we were talking to Lee Keegan, and he's just delighted with how Aidan O'Shea's form has taken fire. And you know, God, anytime anything went wrong for Mayo, he was just the target.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
it's an easy target. It's ridiculous, really.
It's in all the papers. It's in all the papers this morning. We ran those quotes today. You know, anytime anything went wrong, Aidan was the scapegoat, even though there was 15, 20 lads who all would have taken part in matches. Like, you know, Lee made a good point that it's probably because of his big personality and maybe his presence in social media and that. And, you know, he is the poster boy for Mayo GA, and he has been for the last 10 years or so. So maybe it's just easy to have a go with him. But like, I've been to 3 of Mayo games, and just as an outlet, in terms of the style that they have now, it's just completely different for him. And just in there causing havoc at the edge of the square. And like, he's not scoring himself, but he's just an outlet for those boys around him, those lightning runners like Ryan O'Donoghue, James Carr, you know, Killian O'Connor is going to be fit on Sunday as well. He's
a great foil, isn't he? He's a great foil, isn't he? Like, he's completely, it's like nearly, you know, Niall Quinn, Robbie Keane style job almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good comparison. Very interesting to see how Roscommon deal with him now. But they have a very good goalkeeper as well in Colin Lavin. So there'll be a lot of attention on the goalkeepers on Sunday, and especially in terms of how McStay has got a real find in Colin Reap, even though anyone who's been watching club football in Mayo over the last few years would have said that Reap should have been in there anyway, you know, after one of those county titles with Knockmore. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'd say Mayo will still win by a couple of points, but Roscommon will take them right to the wire, and there'll be no whitewashes like we saw in, say, the 2017 quarterfinal replay or anything like that when McStay was Roscommon manager. So there's that tasty dynamic as well. So McStay will have a close relationship with a lot of those Roscommon players, and what he done with them will all be on their minds as well. And you know, he lives here in Roscommon, and you know, I live here in Roscommon now as well. I'm right across the road from Clonagale's pitch, and they're not getting too excited here, but I'd say they're happy with the way they're coming in nicely under the radar into Sunday.
Quick one for you. Any elements from Lee Keegan of, you know, not regretting his retirement, but there's surely a part of him thinking, Jesus, like it's okay missing all the winter training, but when you see what's going on and you see how flying him, any element of that from him or any sense of that from him?
I actually asked him that, and he seems like a man who's completely made peace with his decision.
Because a lot of lads find it very hard to make peace with it.
Yeah, like we were talking to David Tuberty as well, and he was, I wouldn't say he was nearly the opposite, but he said he was watching some of Clare's league games and he was thinking at times going, oh God, maybe I could have made a difference there. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, the likes of the game they lost against Dublin and Croke Park, say, when they had a lead coming into the final 10 minutes and they ended up losing by a point. So, you know, both of those lads will find it difficult this weekend because Championship's a different gravy, and Lee said that himself. But I think Lee's point was the fact that he's got a young family and that he's just got more of a presence at home now. He just seems to have really made peace with it in that sense. And, you know, he was very complimentary in saying that, you know, he didn't say it in black and white, but he seemed to say that if Mayo did do it, that he wouldn't feel like he was missing out or anything, because he would just be delighted for those older players like Aidan O'Shea, Kevin McLaughlin, Jason Doherty, Killian O'Connor, who've been soldiering there and were there from day one with him as well, and who are still going. I think he seemed to say that if they did do it, that he wouldn't feel disappointed for himself, but he would just be delighted for them. So that's just the mark of the man Lee Keegan is, and you know he's genuine when he says that, because he's just that sort of guy. So yeah, he seems very at peace with his decision, because you know it would have been thrown at him as well when you see Stephen Cluxton appearing again at 41. I know it's different when it's a goalkeeper, but Keegan stuck a few big goals past Cluxton in all Ireland finals. So no, I don't think there's any chance of him reappearing now.
Some cracky did it John Terry for the final. Last couple of minutes or something like that. Got involved in celebrations or something like that.
Someone throwing him a number 5 jersey.
Yeah. Connacht is well, it's fascinating in one way, but you could end up, with due respect to everybody involved, you could end up with kind of not a dead rubber final, but a bit of a beatdown in the final. So you have London Sligo playing this weekend, New York and Leitrim playing this weekend. The winners play each other and the winners get into a Connacht final, and if they get into a Connacht final, they're also in the All-Ireland Championship rather than the Tailteann Cup as well. But like, you'd have to say you would fancy Galway, Mayo and Roscommon against any of those four in a Connacht final. But a massive opportunity for those four involved potentially to end up in a Connacht final. You'd probably have Sligo as marginal favourites. You probably would expect Sligo and Leitrim to meet in the semi-final, but a massive opportunity for all them, in fairness.
Yeah, and it was interesting as well, just to go back to the chat with Lee Keegan yesterday. He said whatever big team in Connacht gets to the Connacht final will probably need to rotate their team. Very interesting comments. And he said, you know, that squad rotation now is going to be vital. And he said, if it has to be done in the Connacht final, it has to be done. Now, there's the other side of that if a Mayo or a Galway or a Roscommon rotated their team for a Connacht final and they lost, it would be a disaster. But he seemed to think, in terms of maybe if you are playing a Division 4 team in a provincial final, that you probably will need to start looking ahead to that new round robin group stage when it kicks off. And that would apply to Tailteann Cup teams as well, like stronger Tailteann Cup teams. You know, that in terms of when they get into their group stage, that they're going to have to maybe rotate as well. So
we've no idea, Jason, what's coming down the line with this new structure, really. Like, this is going to be, like, you're going to have to win a hell of a lot of games to win All-Ireland, realistically. Like, Mayo, for example, just say they do go the direct route, you're looking at 3 games in Connacht. You're looking at, what are you looking at? 3 group games.
3 group games, a quarter-final, a semi-final, and a final.
And potentially am I right in saying potentially a 4th game?
A preliminary quarter-final if you finish 3rd.
Yeah, like
Armagh, if Armagh go the direct route per se and they finish 3rd in a round robin group, say if Armagh won Sam Maguire via a preliminary All-Ireland quarter final, they will have won 11 games. Not won 11 games, but they would have played.
If they go through Ulster, yeah.
11 championship games.
Like, I don't know, yeah. I'd say Keegan is probably right about the rotation, because you're just going to have to. Like, you will not survive otherwise. And lads will pick up knocks and whatever. And that's on the back of, they've already played 8 competitive league games as well. as well as a Connacht League. Like, gee, it doesn't be long adding up now, in fairness. I know they've a great pre-season done, but bodies will fall. Bodies will fall come that time. We just quickly talk about the Leinster Championship, Jason. Obviously kicking off probably to very little fanfare this weekend. There's no point in saying any different because Dublin have just steamrolled the whole province. But these games are very meaningful to the counties involved, and while they're not going to beat a Dublin or maybe they might fancy their chance against a Kildare or a Meath, or even potentially allowed later on, but these are big games. So it's Wicklow against Carlow. Wicklow were beaten in the Division 4 final last weekend. Longford against Offaly. You have Laois against Wexford, and they're the 3 games in Leinster. Like, they're probably not anything to write home about, but big games to all of the counties involved by all accounts.
Yeah, sure. We've been saying it for years. Like, if you take Dublin out of there, it's actually quite a very competitive province. And I think that's definitely the case at the minute. Like, it'd be interesting the emotion for your own Offaly as well this weekend. Michael, like, given Liam Cairns passing, like, be very, very emotional day for them now. And, you know, you really kind of feel for them and how they've kind of dealt with the last few weeks. Like, it must be so difficult in there, but it might galvanise them as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, and Liam will be looking down on them, no doubt. Like, and that's a big game for them going to Longford, and, you know, hopefully they can go there and, you know, put in a good performance and kind of somehow keep the show on the road, because, you know, God, things like this, just sport seems so minuscule when things like this happen. Like, Liam's a great guy, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm across the road from Clonagale here, and he was manager over there, and they absolutely loved him. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, he kind of had them for 2 COVID years here in between his different inter-county stints, but God, he was a great fella. Like, I had many good chats with him on the phone. Like, he was always a good fella for taking a call.
He was a great character as well.
Yeah, he was a great character. I remember
Yeah.
seeing those clips of you chatting to him in the live show in the Puck on in Galway as well, and it was just Liam all over. Like, great for Nelly Yarn. Like, and so that's going to be, and be thinking of them this weekend in a way. Like, it's going to be very emotional. Like, and Wicklow Carlow one, Oisín will be gunning for that. You know, they were so unlucky not to get promoted. Like, I could see Wicklow winning that one, especially with home advantage too. Laois Wexford, Billy seemed to get a much better kick out of Laois this year as well. Again, unlucky not to come up. Like, Division 4 was mad when you think about it. It really, really was mad. It's a pity, like, Peter Canavan mentioned this yesterday too. It's a pity we just couldn't give all those games a bit more coverage in that, and that sometimes they don't get a bit more of the spotlight. You know what I mean? Because, like, those final day weekends are just mad.
Sure, the permutations in Division 4 were the best of any division, realistically. You ended up with what did you end up? Did you end up with Sligo were top, and then you had 3 teams on the same points, and it all came down to score difference or whatever, and teams didn't know until a good while after. We just quickly touch on one. Actually, there's one question here, Jason. River Power wants to know what kind of coffee you are rocking.
I don't know. It's one of them espresso pods. There's nothing fancy here for me. I don't even know what it is.
George Clooney is sitting in the background somewhere, just enjoying his espresso pod.
I think he's taking in the turf.
There are 2 Munster Senior quarterfinals this weekend as well. You have Tipperary against Waterford. Waterford have had a tough season so far. Tipperary have had a tough season as well. They're down Conor Sweeney and a couple of other big names as well. Like, this is the winner plays Kerry. Like, you're playing for, you know, a shot at, you know, probably a fair thumping. It's a tough one, really. This is the sort of game where, oh God, I hate to say it, but like, winning it's not a reward to win, if you get me. Do you know what I mean? The whole provincial system is kind of really skewed there. Then on the other side, you have Clare against Cork, which is a fascinating game, because if Clare don't win this and don't end up in a Munster final, they're down the Tailteann Cup. So there's lots of things to play for here.
Yeah, and like a team like Clare will feel they don't belong in the Tailteann Cup. You know, I know for a fact Colin Collins will feel that his team need to be in the Sam Maguire. Like, you know, they would have flirted with promotion to Division 1 here and there, and they ended up getting relegated this year, and just so many near misses for them. Especially that Dublin game at Croke Park, like, you know, it's just
the Kildare game as well. There were 14 like, just the whole you'd hope for them, and I don't think it will, because Colin's history would suggest it won't, but you'd hope that the wheels wouldn't come off now. I think there's too many good players for the wheels to come off. Like Owen Cleary's as good a forward as there is in the country. Like Jamie Malone, Keelan Sexton, they have a lot of really good players, but you just hope that they can get the train back on tracks. There'd be no better way to get back on tracks than to beat Cork at the weekend. That'd be, and then to play Limerick, get a chance to exact a bit of revenge from that penalty shootout defeat there a couple of years ago as well. Or was that last year, actually? Sorry.
That was last year, yeah.
Like
Colin was fuming after that. I remember ringing him afterwards, like, he just felt that A, his team should have closed the game out, and that B, the game should never have gone to penalties. But they came back jumping at the bit after that, and they took a big scalp against Roscommon at Croke Park.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always a big championship scalp in Clare, either way. Like, so Cork won't have it handy if they get through. Cork won't have it handy there at all. Hey, it'll just be funny to see what happens. Like, they've had so little time to prepare for this. Like, I just can't believe the championships here. It's kind of just crept up on us all of a sudden, because you're just in league mode. We're only here talking as the media being in league mode, like, but for the players, like, I don't know, I don't envy them at all.
Well, you have a league final in hurling Division 1 this weekend, on the same weekend that the second tier championship competition kicks off. And there's a fair amount of championship football games as well. And I don't know about you, it's starting to pick up outside, but it is kind of wintry kind of weather. There's still wintry ground. I was down the pitch in Dunboyne here the other day, and it's sludgy, like, it's not championship weather, but that's kind of, I still think we could buy a couple of weeks back with the split seasons if we got rid of pre-season competitions, maybe move the league a week or two earlier. I think Mayo should definitely have a 2-week gap. I just think it's all a bit too condensed. On paper, it looks okay. The practicalities of it all are just completely different. I'd say there's inter-county managers like Johnny Kelly and Offaly must be pulling his hair out. With like playing 7 weeks, they're going to play 7 weeks in a row, and the league could be quickly forgotten if they pick up 2 defeats early in the Joe McDonagh and a couple of injuries, and they already have a couple of injuries, so it's not simple. But
they've only had 6 days. Am I right in saying that?
No, Saturday to Saturday.
Saturday to Saturday, sorry.
In fairness, if it was Sunday to Saturday, it'd just be, a nightmare. It just wouldn't be manageable at all. But Jason, thanks a million for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. And no doubt we'll be chatting to you again soon.
No worries, Mick. I'm going to get in one last cheeky plug as well. If any Leitrim Gales are in New York this weekend, the main man, Martin McHugh, the book that I done with him, Born to Save, will be on sale over there. He sent me a message there this morning. He was flying off. He was hitting the road from Leitrim to Manhattan there this morning. He's in JP Clark's Friday night and Saturday night. If any Leitrim Gales are over there and they want to pick up a copy of the book, I'd say he'll be selling them at Gaelic Park at the match as well. So
that's brilliant, because JP Clark's are obviously there's Leitrim connections, but it's a New York-based pub, and they're the team sponsor as well, which is brilliant. Yeah.
And Larry McCarthy's gone traveled to New York as well this weekend, I believe. They looked around, so it should be a great weekend over there. I'd love to go over there and sample one of those championship weekends in Connacht. I'd say it's right crack now.
We've never had the privilege. We did spend an all-star tour. We were on an all-star tour together in Singapore now. I've never been sent. I've never been sent to New York. Donnacha Boyle from the Independent was over there a couple of years ago, but I've never been there, unfortunately. One of these days, Jason, we'll go on tour.
Gordon Manning went to Ruislip one year when Mayo were over there, and he said it was absolute carnage. So.
It's mad. Yeah, I lived in London for 9 months, and Offaly played London in Ruislip, and it not being smart, every weekend there's a match there. There's just a load of Gaels meeting up. So Offaly played this weekend. Just say Wexford come next weekend. All the Wexford Gaels meet in Ruislip that are over there from London, and all the people from home. Obviously, it's a great occasion. I'd say New York is kind of Ruislip times 100, just given the amount of Irish that are over there. I'd say it's a massive weekend, and it'd be difficult for from a Leitrim point of view to keep the train on the tracks and keep focused on the yard. It's unusual. When would they have set off? Probably Thursday, maybe.
I think they landed last night Irish time in New York. I saw them putting up a tweet, but it was with the time difference. It would have been Thursday afternoon there. Do you know what I mean? So like they're gonna be whipped around New York a bit. Like they're gonna have to do their appearances as well, and that kind of adds to the distraction. Like I remember talking to Dermot Blake when Galway went over there under Joe Kernan. They got stuck there under the ash cloud.
Oh yeah.
And, like, you know, they were hanging out in some of the pubs then, like, and they were kind of starting to eat things they shouldn't have been eating, and maybe a couple of things started going awry. Like, so I'd say I must get talking to him again about that. But
basically, what you're telling me is they got into all sorts of hilarious jams.
I would put it that way. Yeah. I must. If you ever get chatting to any of the Galway boys about that week, I'd say there's a few yarns. There was an ash cloud in Iceland, I think it was, when Joe Kernan was Galway manager, and they got stuck out there for nearly a week.
That's mad, isn't it? That's mad.
Yeah.
Jason, I'm wondering, do you want to stay online while I do the weekly quiz?
Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah. Sure,
But now I don't know whether you'll have the answer. These are tricky enough now, but we'll see how you go. You're not allowed to answer them as they go. Write down an answer maybe as I'm going along. If you mightn't have any answers because they're not simple. But we'll see how we go. Okay. So this is the weekly quiz. The first question is a football question. It is who preceded Rory Gallagher as Derry football manager? So don't say it out loud if you do know it, but yeah, but who preceded Rory Gallagher as Derry football manager? I kind of find that a lot of time when a really successful manager comes along, the previous one can be forgotten a small bit. So that's kind of why I threw that one in there. And this is in a similar vein. Who preceded Mickey Hart as Loud football boss? So who preceded Mickey Hart as Loud football boss?
I think I've got both of them.
Good man. And the last one is, who were the first Connacht team to win a Club All-Ireland in either football or hurling? So across both codes, who were the first Connacht club to win a Club All-Ireland? Okay, so I'll just fire them out again really quickly. Who preceded Rory Gallagher as Derry football manager? Who preceded Mickey Hart as Loud football boss? And who were the first Connacht team to win a Club All-Ireland? That last question is courtesy of the Tony Dorn quiz in Buffer's Alley. Tony went deep into the reserves for that one. Go on, talk to me, Jason.
Do you want answers?
If you have them.
The Derry manager to precede Rory was Damien McErlane.
Excellent.
The Louth manager to precede Mickey Hart was Colin Kelly.
No. And I won't give the answer. And any idea who were the first Connacht team to win a Club All-Ireland?
I have Ballina in my head for some reason, but you said football or hurling, so Portumna in my head as well.
No, long before Portumna. I'm gonna leave you stew on that note, Jason. Apologies. We'll put the clip out and I'll put the answers out. I'll put the answers out in a couple of days. All right, Jason. Thanks a million for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Mick. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, Jason. Good man. So I'll just fly through a couple of fixtures before we finish up. A couple of results, actually. Connacht under-20 football championship semi-final. So Galway had a 2-9 to 6 points win over Leitrim. And Sligo, who won the championship last year, had a comprehensive enough win in the wind-up. 15 points to Roscommon's 1-8. So back-to-back Connacht finals for Sligo. And they'll be trying to win back-to-back titles. Under-20 football championship. Longford had a 1-8 to 9 points win over Carlow. Laois had a brilliant 1-12 to 1-7 win over Meath. I think that books their place in semi-final now. Great goal scored at the very, very end. Not sure if it was an intentional lob or a pointed effort, but that leaves Laois in the semi-finals. I think Meath are in the quarter-finals now. Meath would have won the corresponding minor 3 years ago, to the best of my knowledge, because they beat Offaly. Dublin had a win over Offaly, 1-15 to 1-9. That means Offaly are now out. Louth had a 2-12 to 2-11 win over Wicklow, and Westmeath had a 1-16 to 1-9 win over Wexford. And in the Munster Minor Hurling Championship round 3, Cork had a 2-13 to 1-8 win over Tipperary. In the Leinster Minor Football Championship, it was Kildare 3-15, Offaly 2-11. Kildare had mounted a huge lead, but Offaly obviously cut back into it, but Kildare still won by 7. Finished Laois 2-12, Longford 1-5. Dublin 1-15, Louth 1-10, Westmeath 10 points, Meath 2-10, Wexford 1-10, Carlow 1-7, and in the Munster Minor Hurling Championship round 3 it was Cork 1-28, Tipperary 1-19, and in the All Ireland Under-20 Hurling Championship B quarter final, Derry 321, Mayo 18. A couple of fixtures for the bank holiday Monday. Tipperary versus Clare in the Munster Under-20 Football Championship quarter-final in Semple Stadium at 7 p.m. and Limerick face Waterford in Ballygran at 2 p.m. Thanks a million, folks, for joining us again. Really, really appreciate it. Another packed show. We'll be back on Monday to review all the hurling action and all the football championship action from the weekend. Thanks a million for joining us, and we will see you then.